Welcome everybody to another week of Walking Dead Power Rankings. We return after a visceral season premiere that saw the departure of two characters, so this week seemed a lot calmer in comparison. This week's episode was set entirely in the Kingdom as we watch Carol and Morgan get to know the residents of this new community, and more importantly, King Ezekiel and his companion Shiva, who I should probably mention is a friggin' tiger. Never before has Walking Dead delved this deep into the zany side that often comes through in the comics, and they dealt with it in the best way that they could have.
I don't know what the hell's going on in the most wonderful way.
But let's go ahead and dive into our characters' top 10 in an episode that really only featured a few of our regulars. At number 10 is Rosita. Probably still reeling from the loss of Abraham. We will get to see more of how she processes this loss later on in the season, but she played hooky from this episode, along with our number 9, Coral. Unfortunately still hookless, the young Pirates of B now has to deal with the subjugation of his family and father by the maniacal Negan and the Saviors, but not this week. The number 8 features our first character who actually shows up in this episode, as well as a newcomer to the Power Rankings themselves, Ezekiel and Shiva, since they're basically a pair. And what a week these two had. In the 7th season, we have gotten to some of the fan-favorite parts already introduced in the comics, and with the introduction of the Kingdom and its king, we have only expanded the map of Walking Dead. And by the way, will we ever get a map? I mean, at some point it would be nice to have a reference for all of these new communities popping up. But in Ezekiel's first episode, he 100% stole the show and is clearly having the most fun of any of the cast in the set. Although his character's facade is pulled back awfully quick, it's fascinating to watch a layered character like this in a show that rarely features such complicated characters outside of the main 3 or so. Both sides of Ezekiel, though, are incredibly likable and watchable, and his connection with Shiva only makes this character more legendary in the world he lives in, and cool to all the viewers at home. Watching him bounce off 2 of the better characters in the show with Carol and Morgan was also exciting to see and helped establish him as a true force within the show, and hopefully an ally in the battle to come, as he too is being squeezed by the Saviors. Anyways, Ezekiel is easily one of the most promising characters to join the show in a while, and hopefully he won't have the same bad luck as most of the past black characters on the show have had to deal with, but his road is one to watch for now. And at number 7 is the other example of an incredibly promising character to burst on the scene with Negan. He took a break after his batting practice last episode, but it's looking like next week will give us more Saviors and more Daryl, so we'll have to check back in then. And then just outside of our top 5 at number 6 is Carol. Wheeling around in the chair and swiping things by using her grandma routine as usual, Carol is still gripping with her identity crisis from last season, but luckily Ezekiel is there to see through her charade and give her sort of a lifeline to keep her from heading off into the wild on her own once again. Carol and Zeke promise to be one of the most interesting dynamics for the rest of the season, even possibly adding a queen to the Kingdom. We'll just have to see, but Carol certainly has some priceless reactions to meeting this tiger-wielding king initially, and by the end of the episode was allowed to see underneath his charade, and hopefully find a new place where she can once again be useful. And our top 5 starts off with Michonne, who dropped a spot after a strong start to the season for the character who surpassed her. She's still alive after last week, and so is her pseudo-family and Carl and Rick, but her biggest problem has and always has been a lack of material outside of slicing up the dead. But it's a long season, and we'll see what's in store soon enough. And at number 4 is Morgan, a man who seemingly has completely assimilated into the Kingdom. He's found a role as a teacher to a young boy who will probably be walker bait not too long from now, and he's found trust in Ezekiel, even though he himself continues to struggle with how he lives his life. Last season saw Morgan embrace his pacifism to the point that he completely broke Carol, and yet he ultimately shot and killed a man for trying to kill her. That decision continues to haunt him, and although the storyline isn't always my favorite and can at times be aggravating, it's still far more interesting than most of the storylines going on right now, as we watch a man who has lost everything try to find some kind of philosophy to guide his life in this new world. Morgan figures to be a main cog once again, and I couldn't be happier that he's returned from his long early season's absence. And at number 2 is Maggie once again. Her story looks to be one of the most devastating this season as she attempts to come to grips with the loss of Glenn while also bringing a new life into the world as her group is besieged by outsiders. She's one of the few characters who has the ability to significantly affect how this whole thing ends up. But will she be ready? And at number 1, once again, Mr. Rick Grimes. Now a pawn rather than a king, he'll have to come to grips with this new power structure and hopefully exploit some kind of weakness in order to get Alexandria back on top. But until then, this has been Walking Dead's Power Rankings for the second episode of Season 7. Next week is all Daryl and Saviors, since apparently only one location can be showed per episode, so get ready for a long, slow burn. Filler. Anyways, what did you guys think of Ezekiel and Shiva? Are you as excited as I am to see so much more of the comics coming into the show? And what do you think we'll see with Negan and the Saviors next week? Watch these videos if you feel like it, if you want to see more of what I'm doing. I'll have more music, movie, and TV coming up soon. And not to mention a Doctor Strange review. Finally, another Marvel movie coming out this week. Until then, I'll just have to see you when I see you.